This video will demonstrate how to create your own scenarios for the Freight and Fuel Transportation Optimization Tool, or FTOT. This video assumes you have already downloaded and installed FTOT and have also downloaded the supplementary data and documentation from the FTOT landing page. The FTOT user guide provides a comprehensive reference for customizing input files. Refer to Section 3, Setting Up a Standard Scenario, and Section 4, Advanced Scenario Options, for guidance on creating your own scenarios. These sections walk you through the process for creating a new scenario and updating all necessary files. In addition to the user guide, FTOT's Quick Start and Reference Scenarios are helpful resources that can serve as templates for your own scenarios. These example scenarios are available for download on the FTOT landing page. We recommend starting from whichever quick start or reference scenario best matches your desired use case, since certain use cases require specific input files. For example, a user may want to use FTOT's candidate processor generation functionality for their scenario. The user should work from reference scenario 2, which includes a batch file and input CSV files unique to the creation and use of candidate processor facilities. As another example, for scenarios involving pipelines, a user may wish to work from reference scenario 6, which includes a special input file to enable flows over pipeline. Starting from one of the quick start or reference scenarios is highly recommended to help ensure all required inputs are correctly set up. For this tutorial, I'm interested in creating a new scenario in which cherries flow from Hood River County in Oregon to King County in Washington State. This is a simple supply chain involving just one raw material producer, or RMP, and one destination facility with no processing. So I'm going to start with template files from Quick Start 1. Let's create a copy of our Quick Start 1 directory and rename our folder, let's say Northwest RMP Destination, or something similar as a quick description of our scenario. Open our new folder. Now we want to update each of these input files for our new scenario. Let's start with the batch file. Let's open this in a text editor. And here we're just going to update the XML scenario path to point to our new directory. Save, close. Next, we're going to update our input facility commodity files. These are in the input data folder. Here we see separate files for our raw material producer and our destination. Let's open the raw material producer file. Because I copied this file directly from Quick Start 1, it's already set up with the required column names, and it shows one Massachusetts RMP facility used in Quick Start 1. We need to replace this facility with one that corresponds to Oregon's Hood River County from our RMP feature class. For this example scenario, we're using the same county's geodatabase as in Quick Start 1. That county's geodatabase is located in the common data folder that gets downloaded from the FTOT landing page alongside the scenarios and the documentation. If you do wish to use custom facility spatial data, the user guide includes instructions on how to use that custom GDB and bring your own facilities, whether they're for counties, cities, or located at a specific address. I happen to know that Hood River County has a facility name of RMP 41027. So let's update the field here. And it's still a raw material producer. We're going to change our commodity to cherries. And then let's say this facility can produce 150 US tons of cherries. Cherries are a solid, and this is a raw material producer. It's creating an output. We could list additional RMPs in this file if we wish, but in our simple scenario, we just have this one raw material producer. So I'm going to save and close. And then similarly, let's update the destination CSV file. As before, we're going to change the facility name to point to another point in our destination point feature class. We want this to correspond to King County in Washington State. I happen to know this is DEST 53033. This is still an ultimate destination. Commodities cherries. And let's say this destination has demand of 150 US tons, which happens to be the amount that our supplier can produce. Still solid, and now this is actually an input. This commodity is an input to our destination. Save and close. Okay, the last file to edit is very important. This is the scenario XML file. You can open this in a text editor. This is a structured text file that contains many of the configuration parameters for an FTOT scenario run. So we're going to start by updating our scenario name. Let's just say Pacific Northwest, Pacific Northwest. You can update the scenario description. We're going to say simple movements such as of cherries. And then the next thing we want to update is the location of our input data files. So if we scroll down to facility commodity information, we can see here we have a file path for our RNP commodity data, and below it for our destinations commodity data. We just want to update the file paths to our new input files. Change the folder name. We can, if we prefer, instead of having an absolute file path, we can express this as a relative path relative to the scenario XML location. This is good if you are creating many copies of a scenario and you don't want to always have to update these file paths. But for now, let's just keep this as an absolute path. Other important elements that in certain scenarios may require updating are, if you scroll up, file paths for the geospatial facility information. This element here points to the geodatabase and feature class with the point data for our RMP facilities, and right below it we have the point data for our destination facilities. As previously mentioned, we're using the same county's GDB as in Quick Start 1, so we don't need to update these paths. Many of the other parameters in this file are set to defaults suggested by the FTOT team. And sources for these default values can be found in the FTOT technical documentation. There are also a few XML elements that allow for more advanced scenarios and also additional detailed reporting. We're going to keep scrolling down to permitted modes. This section universally sets which modes are allowed for routing in your FTOT scenario. If you want to allow some commodities to travel by a particular mode but not others, you're going to need to specify that in a separate commodity mode CSV file. You're going to also need that commodity mode CSV file for any scenarios using pipeline. You can see reference scenario 6 for an example. We always recommend checking the permitted modes section and to make sure that these are what you intend for your scenario. So in our example scenario, we're going to say that flows over the road network are not permitted. We're going to set the road element to false. At this point, I've made all the changes I want to make. Let's save and close our file. And we're ready to run our scenario. You can do this by double-clicking the batch file, or you can open a command prompt window. Drag the batch file into the window, click the window, and hit enter. This will take a few minutes to run, so we will return shortly. Okay, now that our scenario has finished running, let's view our results. Let's start with the maps. Open the maps folder. And let's look at one of the O-step maps, the one with labels. This map shows the optimal route determined by FTOT to transport cherries from Mount Hood County to King County. We see that in the optimal solution are commodities flowing by rail. Remember, we turned road off in the XML. Let's close the map and let's go to the reports folder. We have a variety of reports, including a Tableau workbook, but we're going to focus on the text report. At the top of the report, we have the scenario name, and we have the timestamp for when our reports were generated. Scroll down. First, we have some summary tables with commodity potentials, optimal routed amounts, and facility utilization. The scenario summary section presents some aggregate metrics summed over all of our commodities. In this case, we only have one commodity. And then the commodity summary section presents some commodity-specific metrics, in this case for cherries. And the facility summary section presents facility-specific metrics, in this case for our destination facility and our RMP facility. Under commodity summary, one piece of information is on total flow of cherries, and we see that this is in metric tons. This is the default unit for solid commodities. There is a place in the scenario XML to specify the default units you would like to use if you would prefer that FTOT convert all of your quantities to something other than metric tons. This concludes the video tutorial on creating your own scenarios in FTOT. Try creating a custom scenario of your own from the existing FTOT Quick Start and reference scenarios. You can even take pieces from a few different example scenarios as needed to create the right FTOT scenario for your use case. The FTOT user guide provides details on which input files are required for each functionality. Please feel free to contact us if you have issues. You can do this through the GitHub repository by logging an issue, or by the email posted on our landing page at volpeusdot.github.io/ftot-public.